Brad Meltzer has a brand new book out. It's called The Nazi Conspiracy, The Secret Plot to Kill Roosevelt, Stalin, and Churchill. That is out and available now. Please welcome our buddy, Mr. Brad Meltzer.
Oh, I'm happy to be here now.
How are you, sir?
I miss you is what I am. I'm happy to be here.
Can I tell you this? I've read a lot of your books. Probably most of them, I would think. That includes the kids' books. Top three?
I love you for it.
Top three?
You know
top
why?
Four?
Let's be honest why.
Okay.
Because it's Jews making money off Nazis. I mean, it's got to be the greatest thing. If my parents were alive today, it's the best middle finger of all the Holocaust is like, okay, I know what to do with this. No, this book is obviously, I love that you think it's a top three. I mean, I'm so proud of it.
It's so good. It is so good.
Because it's relevant in a way that we never anticipated when we started it with. And by the way, writing a book with a co-author named Josh Mensch is part of, I think, what makes the book a better book.
Okay, so the setup is it's World War II. And by the way, we should point, it's a true book. It is a true story. It is like you did the Lincoln conspiracy, the first conspiracy, the Washington
secret plot to kill George Washington.
Right. And so this is, it's World War II. The Nazis are pretty successful at this point. They're fighting, kind of on two sides. They've invaded Russia. They're going after the Russians. So Stalin is pissed. Obviously, you got Winston Churchill in England and the U.S. with FDR, and the three of them are going to have a summit meeting in Iran, in Tehran. Right? And that's all true. Like, that's all true.
Everything in this book is true. There's 30 pages of footnotes in this thing. And
those are the only 30 pages, just so you know?
That you did not read. Yes,
I got to the end and I was like, oh my God, there's footnotes. Yes.
Because you were psyched there were pictures in the book.
Yes.
Which, by the way, I'm responsible for all those pictures. I'm like, we need pictures in this book because we have crazy Nazis. And if we don't put them in, no one's going to believe it.
Did you like, though, this is going to sound bougie, but at one point I was reading the book. And so I texted Brad just a picture of one of the Nazis. I was like,
Reinhard Heydrich, you sent me, yeah.
This is a bad guy.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, they would send, I'm like, let's get a picture of this guy. And then they would send this picture. It would be like, he has a scar on his face, he's evil, and he's got a raised eyebrow. And I'm like, these guys are central casting. It's so, I'm like, there's no Nazi smiling pictures, needless to say. They're all looking so horrible in every picture. And I'm like, it's just whatever one you want. He looks like a jerk. Like, it's great.
So anyway, so the setup is they're all going to meet in Tehran.
Yep.
And how much can I give away?
No, let's set it up. No, this is all true. So the setup is obviously 1943. They're coming together. This is the moment where the big three have to get on the same page.
Right.
There's millions of lives at stake. FDR is like, we got to look each other in the eye, decide if we're going to do what becomes the invasion of Normandy. Everyone's waiting on this meeting. It has to happen. And Stalin's like, you got to invade because the Nazis are decimating us here in the Soviet Union. So FDR comes to town. He's in his big motorcade, and the motorcade's riding down the center of the city. And everyone, listen, they want to see the President of the United States of America. They're all looking and waving, craning their necks. And what they don't know is that the person in that motorcade is not FDR.
Right.
It's actually a Secret Service who's acting as a decoy. The real FDR is across town, ducked down in the back of a beat-up sedan, hiding, and he's racing through the city streets because they're worried that a Nazi assassin is going to murder him. And I just ruined chapter 1 of the Nazi conspiracy, but that's chapter 1. That's how we open.
Right. And the story is the Nazis had flown in a bunch of German paratroopers who were there because they were going to try to kill him, or any of them, whether it was Churchill, Stalin, or FDR. But the way that the U.S. legation, I guess is what it's called.
It's basically an embassy.
An embassy isn't connected to where the British and the Russian one, those two are like next door neighbors. So FDR's got to schlep across town to get over there, and they've got the whole street lined up, and all these German paratroopers they don't know where they are. You only need one with a bullet that can get them. And all you picture is, I don't know what Tehran looked like back then, but like you could see, like in your mind, you could see this whole motorcade and everything's going.
Course.
And then a little beat up car, like sputtering smoke out of the back with some dingy Jeep in front of it, just racing through the streets with like garbage flying all over the place.
That's
the president.
That is literally the president ducked down. I'm like, why is the president hiding at the height of World War II obviously who's trying to kill him. There's, as you said, there's two Nazis we should talk about. One of them is a guy named Franz Mayer. He's in his late 20s. And when the Allies take over Tehran, they honestly think he's a Nazi spy. And Berlin thinks, oh, he must have been captured. They think he's dead. He's gone. And what you find out is he's been alive the whole time. He's been making a network of people who are sympathetic to the Nazi cause. He's been building these groups. He gets word back to Berlin and he says, listen, I got a drop zone in the desert. Send me supplies. Send me money. He's like, here's a secret code you can put on the radio so only I will know you got my message. And when the Nazis get that message, they realize they have the greatest thing you ever get in a fight, which is an opportunity.
Right.
And now the big three are coming to Tehran, and you have a guy who's on the ground. And guess what? That's an amazing moment. Because everyone back in World War II used to use assassination as a real weapon. So obviously, the stories of, depending on what Tom Cruise movie you watch, they're trying to kill Hitler. They're trying to, bomb him in the Alps, try and put on the train, bomb him and kill him there. We used to do it ourselves as the United States. When Pearl Harbor happens, soon after, FDR finds out that Admiral Yamamoto, who's the architect of Pearl Harbor from Japan.
Such a great moment in the book.
And they say to him, listen, we know where he is. What do you want to do? You want to kill him or not? And FDR's thinking about it, and he knows the consequences. He knows they're going to, of course, retaliate. But he famously says, get Yamamoto. And Winston Churchill, the Nazis at one point, they think he's on a commercial jet. They shoot the jet out of the sky, kill everyone on board, because they're like, Winston Churchill's on that plane.
Right.
And so it's being used. So when you have the big three coming together at the height of World War II, it's a tantalizing target for the Nazis. And they're just like, this is an opportunity for us to do some major, major damage. And of course, if it happens, it all changes. The whole war potentially changes.
Well, I was going to say, go back to Pearl Harbor. All of this is going on in Europe. The U.S. is not really involved. I mean, they're involved from talking to them, but they said the sentiment in the U.S. was nobody wanted to be involved in World War II with the Nazi takeover and everything. Everybody was just kind of like,
listen,
not in our backyard.
Of course, but we tell the story today in America that we punched the Nazis in the jaw. We saved democracy for everyone. We're the best. Great story, but we had no desire to fight Nazis. It's World War I had destroyed and decimated families by so many young men dying in the war. Obviously, the stock market crashes. The country's in, FDR's elected to save the country from ruin. We don't want another fight across the globe. It's only until Pearl Harbor happens that we're like, okay, now we got to fight those guys. We'll fight the Japanese. And Adolf Hitler makes many miscalculations, but his two biggest ones is one, he thinks that the Russians are going to fall. He's like, I'm going to attack the Soviet Union. They're going to fall. I got them.
I've stormed through everywhere else. Why would Russia be any different?
Right. And he's obviously wrong about that because they're going to fight to the death. But the other one he makes the mistake of is they say to Hitler, listen, the United States has declared war on Japan. We don't need to mess with them. Just let them be. Let those two fight. We don't need to mess with them. And Hitler literally slaps his own leg and cackles like a cartoon villain. And he's like, this is a great opportunity. He's like, this is fantastic because strong people don't wait to be attacked. We attack. And he declares war on us. And it's a huge miscalculation. Winston Churchill remembers this one quote that he heard about the United States. And he says that the United States is like a gigantic boiler. And once you light a fire under it, there is no limit to the amount of power it will produce. Right. And Churchill's right about that too. And it's a huge miscalculation that Hitler picks the wrong fight. But we had no desire to go fight Nazis until we got attacked.
And happy is the wrong term of like somebody being happy about Pearl Harbor. But there's a moment in the book where Churchill realizes they're in now.
Oh, no.
The U.S. is in.
He needs it. He's like, this is, again, not happy that it happened, but this is, of course, for him, this is the stroke of fate that changes everything. He's like, we got an ally. Here we go. I'm not alone here now. And the moments that I love are, listen, we all know Churchill. We all know Stalin. I love the moments that we don't know. I love, you see, there's a Nazi in the book named Otto Skorzeny. Okay?
Dude.
We got to talk about him.
Dude.
Otto.
Did you know who he was?
I never heard his name. I had no idea who he was. And I love the stories of these people that are kind of like the footnotes because they're no less important and they're wild. And he gets paged to come down to Adolf Hitler's Wolf's Lair, which is his secret headquarters. And if your secret headquarters is named the Wolf's Lair,
right?
It has the word lair in the title, right? It comes with a cat that you can stroke. And when he gets there, he's a special operations guy, and Hitler's bringing together all of his special ops guys because he wants to see who the toughest and best is. And he lines them up all in a big room, shoulder to shoulder, and Adolf Hitler gives them a test of one question, and he says to them, "What do you think of Italy?" And they all give this kind of kiss the boss rear end answer that's like, "Oh, we love Italy, and we're going to fight with them to the death, and they're on our side." And Otto Skorzeny shouts out above everybody and says, "I am from Austria, my Führer." And he's gambling because he knows Adolf Hitler's from Austria. And if you're a true Austrian, you actually have great resentment to Italy because Italy back in World War I took a key piece of Austria and never gave it back.
Right.
And Adolf Hitler looks at this Nazi, Otto Skorzeny, and he's like, "You're my guy." And we shouldn't ruin what the mission is, but I will say he puts Otto Skorzeny on a secret mission, a rescue mission that is so crazy. And you know what I'm talking about. That when we were writing about it, I said to the editor, Josh,
we should just make a separate book out of this.
I mean, no, we
it's
really
Hollywood.
could.
Even if you
100%.
saw it in Hollywood, and it's a true story. And by the way, and I won't say it, but it's a secret mission about somebody. Everybody knows that person's name. Everybody knows that person's name.
And I never even knew that story, by the way. I did not know that. I was going to say,
did you know that existed? I read that and I was like, I'm the stupidest person in the world.
No.
He's a very famous name, world leader. Everybody knows the name. And you get there and you're like, I'm honestly the dumbest person in the world. I had no idea
but
this
it's
was
the
his
best
life.
story, right? So he sends him on this mission that, Nazis are flying from the sky and they're like 80% of you are going to be dead. And it's like Mission Impossible with Nazis at this moment. And I said to the editor, Josh and I said to the editor, we need to put a photograph here of this secret mission. Because if we don't, no one will believe that this actually happened. So my son is reading the Nazi conspiracy. I got him, had some connections to get him an early copy. And so he's reading through the book. And as he's reading through the book, he's like, "Dad, this guy Otto Skorzeny." And I'm like, "I know." And he's like, "Is this real?" I'm like, "It's real." And he's like, "Are you sure it's real?" I'm like, "It's real." And then I say to him, "Turn the page." And he turns the page and sees the picture of Otto Skorzeny.
Of him, right. I said that to Brad. I was like, another bad guy.
On the secret mission, you see him literally what he does and the moment of victory for him. And my son's like, "Oh, he's a bad guy." And you're just like, but those moments blow me away because, this.
But how do you not know that story? You know everything. How do you not know that story? Maybe not the guy.
Yeah, but that's the question, right? Like, why do we not know this? And the reason we don't know these stories
He's such a famous person.
I know. And it shows you how obsessed we are with the American version of it. Right? Like, when this all happens, everyone's like, why don't I know this story that the Nazis tried to kill Churchill and Stalin and FDR? It's because FDR comes back from the meeting, and he has a press conference at the White House, and he says to everyone, "Yeah, the meeting went really well, and by the way, the Nazis tried to kill us." And everyone's like, the phones start ringing. They're like, "What are you talking about?" It makes the front page of every paper. It's the biggest story in the whole country.
Right.
And then guess what happens? After that is Normandy. And 150,000 men storm the beaches. 1 million more are on standby. It becomes the greatest, biggest story that changes the entire war. And this moment of the plot to kill them, the big three, becomes a footnote. It becomes lost to history. So that's why we don't know these moments. But to me, those are the best parts. I mean, even Pearl Harbor, I didn't know this one. We all know the Pearl Harbor speech. It's, December 7th is a date which will live in infamy. But this detail that we put in the book is when it happens, FDR at that point in time, he was obviously in a wheelchair and he couldn't really move under his own power. But the moment that I love the most is when he goes to speak to Congress. Usually they wheel him up and they put him up there. Someone carries him, the Secret Service carry him. And he says, "No, I'm going there under my own power." And he uses his arm crutches and kind of walks up the podium. He's dragging the dead weight of his legs behind him.
Right.
If you go on YouTube and look the speech up, he never makes any hand motions because he's physically holding himself up to stand and only makes, accentuates points with his chin and his head by bobbing it. And I'm like, this is an incredible moment. How do I not know even this part of it? But again, because all we ever tell is, let's go punch the Nazis.
So so for the Nazi conspiracy, how did you learn about the assassination attempt?
So this is the thing. I don't believe the internet is good for much, but I believe in the algorithm. When the algorithm I have a buddy who the algorithm shows him only clothes that look like he wants to dress in the Matrix.
Right.
Okay. And he's like, "Why is the algorithm giving me this?" I'm like, "Dude, this is what it thinks you are, and it's not wrong. I've seen you dress." That's how you are. My algorithm is full of crazy obscure history because that's what I like. And I found this story online years ago. It was like a barely a mention. It was like a half page, maybe a page with barely any details, just saying there was a plot to kill Churchill, Stalin, and FDR. And I'm like, what? I never heard this. And of course, I went down the rabbit hole and then went to Josh, and Josh and I were like, we should do this. But the question when you do these books, it's not, it's titillating to say, hey, we found the secret plot. That's great. But for us, we always ask the question, what's the book really about?
Right.
What's it really about? And we knew at that time, when Charlottesville happened here, we all wring our hands. Or when Kanye opens his mouth and says anti-Semitic stuff, we wring our hands. We're like, I can't believe this is happening in America. I can't believe that, it feels like something that should be in Germany and years ago. And then we find, as we're starting the research, that in World War II, there was a Nazi rally in Madison Square Garden.
Thank you. 20,000 people at Madison Square Garden.
In New York City, 20,000 Nazis show up. They're cheering. There's a giant banner of George Washington surrounded by swastikas. The first speaker of the day says, if George Washington were alive today, he'd be friends with Adolf Hitler. And in that moment, you realize, we've had Nazis here. They haven't left.
Right.
And World War II is not that long ago. Anne Frank is born the same year as Barbara Walters. Just to put that in perspective,
wow.
Right? We see one in black and white, but one is in full color to us. It's not that long ago. And to me, what this book is about at its core, what the Nazi conspiracy does is just show you firsthand that if you don't use your voice, if you don't speak up and learn this history, you are going to repeat it, of course.
Right. When I got to the part about the rally at Madison Square Garden, you sit there and go, I can't imagine that would take place anytime today. Like, there's no way that would take place. And then you're right. You think back and you go, how did it take place then?
Yeah. I mean, because you know why? Because there's so, we always point to Adolf Hitler and we're like, that's the bad guy. And one of the key moments in the book for me is there's a conference, a government conference outside Berlin called the Wannsee Conference. And it's boring government bureaucratic stuff, just like the government stuff we have here. Everyone walks in, there's a big table, they all go around the table, all the government employees get their, file folder, and everyone grabs a pencil from the pencil cup and they sit around for the meeting. You'd think they're kind of figuring out what roads to pave. But instead, what these Germans are doing is they're figuring out how many Jews are in each village and how they're going to efficiently murder them all.
Right.
And we point the finger at Hitler, but there were all these people that were in this meeting and none of them did anything.
Right.
None of them. And to me, that's why we see these things repeat. So to me, the American dream is not, hey, you can make money in this town. The American dream to me is when you see someone being picked on, when you see someone being bullied, you use your voice and you say enough. And what it takes is, authoritarianism has a recipe. And it takes this big personality person who has a big ego. And in this case, it takes a bunch of white, born in Germany, these Germans that are there, that then point their finger and tell a hateful story about those people.
Right.
Those people are the reason for your problems. And we hear those words over and over, those people. And it's a code, right? In World War II, it's the Jewish people. In the Civil Rights era, it's the black community. It's the gay community in the 70s. It's the immigrant community. When you see those words, those people, you gotta say enough. Enough.
Can I ask you this? Like something else that takes place, and it's not as grand as the rally at Madison Square Garden, but it stuck out as weird. So FDR has a relationship with Winston Churchill, and they see each other periodically. At one point, Churchill comes to the United States.
He comes to the United States.
He works at the White House for 3 weeks.
Not only that,
he takes up residence. How does that,
of
3
course,
weeks?
3 weeks are like, listen.
It's his house.
You got the East Wing. This is yours. The best part of that story, I thought you were going, the best part of that story is
he's naked.
Winston Churchill. By the way, I put this in the book. I was like, there's no way we're leaving this out. The Winston Churchill comes to the White House. He's in the White House. Every day he takes a bath. That's just his ritual. He takes a bath.
And brandy in a bath.
And a brandy in a bath, which is like the most Winston Churchill thing you can't even make up, right? And he has this brandy and he's in the bath. And at one moment, FDR and one of his aides walk in as he's naked. Okay, now I've just painted the picture of Winston Churchill naked for all of you. You're welcome. Okay, and in that moment, Winston Churchill says the greatest line as far as I'm ever concerned. He says, the Prime Minister of Great Britain has nothing to hide from the President of the United States. Which, if you ever get caught naked, that is the line to use. It's like the most epic line of all time. I'm like, and Josh is like, here's what happened. I'm like, that's going in the book. He's like, you sure? I'm like, I'm positive. The Nazi conspiracy cannot continue past page 28 without this moment in the White House. Trust me, this is some of the best stuff we have to offer. But those moments, are there. We've done a book, as you said, on George Washington, the plot to kill him.
Right.
We've done Abraham Lincoln. When we've now studied FDR in the Nazi conspiracy, but it makes me go, okay, what makes a good president? And the best presidents are not the ones who make the best promises or make the best speeches. The best ones, who we all agree are the best ones, are the ones who, when a disaster strikes, they can adjust and pivot and somehow help us as a country deal with this. And FDR, if he has nothing else, and that's why we love George Washington, it's why we love Abraham Lincoln, but FDR, if he has belief in one thing, it's his ability to charm. He's on like the charm offensive. He's like, Stalin likes me more, Churchill. I got him.
Right.
And then he goes to Churchill and he's like, you know what? I know Churchill likes me more. And they've got like a Mean Girls vibe going, the three of them.
A little
bit,
right.
Like they're like a day away from a burn book, like, but they're just like it. To me, it's amazing to watch that humanity, because we think of these guys as like, Churchill and Stalin and FDR are these, immovable statues who are, grand and amazing, but they're really human, and they're petty, and they're incredible, and they're horrible, and they're, short with each other. And I love the fact that, World War II, us winning was not a foregone conclusion.
Right.
And this moment is where you get to see that how it actually shifts and how it twists, and how truly the Nazis get beat, not in that cartoon comic book way.
You know what, though? Like, I'm glad you said that about Churchill, because, like, listen, what do I know, right? I read more about Churchill in your book than I've ever read about Churchill in my life. So I was reading about it, and like, but what the perception of Churchill is. And there's parts in the book, like he does one thing that I think is really awesome. He is really proud of naming conflicts.
He loves code names. Yeah. Code names.
No, he does. But I like his reasoning. He's like, I don't want a mother and a father to have to bury their son who died in the conflict of like,
you say ballyhoo or something.
Ballyhoo. Yeah. I want them to have died in a conflict that has a big name. So he was like, I'll name it. You guys figure out what it is, but I'll name it. But then there's other times where you're like, the guy's kind of a pussy. He's like, he just keeps kicking the can down the road.
Oh, when they're trying to get him to invade Normandy. And I, again, for me, Winston Churchill is the guy that like gives these speeches that rally everybody. And I'm like, oh, but when we were doing the research, I'm like, no, he's the guy that's holding up the invasion of Normandy. And in the beginning, FDR and him are both like, maybe we shouldn't do it now. Let's wait a little bit. And then a year goes by and Stalin's like, we need the help. And Churchill's the one going, maybe not just yet.
Right.
And to put it all in perspective of like who's lost what, the United States buried 421,000 people in World War II. Great Britain and the United Kingdom buried about 450,000. The Soviet Union buried 24 million people.
It's crazy.
And I know we all know, of course, about the Holocaust. I'm Jewish. We all know, we're raised with that story. But the decimation that's taking place throughout the entire war, there's that moment in the Battle of Leningrad.
Oh, where they surround the city.
The Nazis come in, they surround the city. They know they've won, okay? They don't want to deal with POWs. They're like, that's a headache. So we're going to surround the city. No one goes in, no one goes out, including food. They're going to starve everyone in the entire city to death. And it takes place in no time. It starts going. And, quickly people start eating their dogs.
Right.
Then they start eating rats. Then they start looking at each other and thinking about eating the unthinkable. And that happens. And within a year, 900,000 people are dead just in Leningrad alone.
Right.
And this is not including all the other battles that are going, these brutal battles that are going. And the sheer devastation of World War II was truly stunning and frightening to me. Again, we all know World War II was massive, but truly is one of the only times you can say millions of lives were at stake. And this meeting that takes place between FDR, Stalin, and Churchill, if it doesn't happen, we don't, as you said, Churchill would have just kicked the can down the road for God knows how long.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing that I love is like the book starts, like you said, chapter 1 is the motorcade is going to this meeting.
Oh, yeah.
And every Normandy, you learn about Leningrad, you learn about the Skorzeny craziness, you learn about all that, and then you end up back at the meeting. Like, you learn about everything that takes place, and that gets me to the whole thing of it's a history book. That's all, at its core, it's a history book about a moment that a lot of people don't know about, but then it turns into how we get involved with Pearl Harbor, the Yamamoto story, which I didn't know that. I have no idea. So you learn all of that, but it reads so It's a novel. It really is a novel. It reads just like a novel. Like you get to the end of it and you're like, okay, here we go. Let's go on to the next page.
Well, listen, Josh is an incredible researcher and I love working with him, and I'm a thriller writer.
Right.
So what you see in these pages, it reads like a thriller because I'm like, when I read history, I don't want to be bored. Don't give me an encyclopedia entry that's full of dates. I don't care. Tell me what happened and Elmore Leonard said, if you want to write a good book, you got to leave out the parts that people skip. And I always took that to mean just put in the cool parts.
Right.
And I was like, there's so many cool parts. People want to see what the Nazis were doing. People want to see what's happening in the Wolf's Lair, what Hitler's doing behind the scenes. When you read the Nazi conspiracy, you will never look at World War II the same way again, because we're going to show you we don't do the sweeping changes in the air.
Right.
Historians who do that, God bless them. If you want to do that, read them. But what we do, I really believe, Elliot, as I get older, we are stories.
Right.
We are walking stories. And every day when we walk around, we hold ourselves out, the pieces of us that make the story that we want to exist. And we hold ourselves out to people and we say, this is the story I am. And we hold back parts of us and we hide parts of us that we say, you know what, I'm not going to show anybody that. But we're all living stories, and there's a power in that. And to me, when you show these ordinary people, like this guy that I talked about, Franz Mayer, this Nazi.
Right.
The reason we know about him is because he's sleeping with this wealthy woman in the city.
Oh, Sanjari.
Who he's in love with, Lily Sanjari. And you know that the bad Nazi's always going to be named Lily. She's like terrible. And then what he doesn't know is she's sleeping with an undercover guy who's an American GI.
Right.
And he's whispering all his Nazi secrets in her ear in bed. And she's whispering them right back to us. I can't make that up. It's too awesome. And those little moments, these people you've never heard of have so much power in history, and it's no different for us today. And I think those stories to me are forever what is going to drive all the work I do.
And when it starts, but the novel part of it or the thriller part of it, when it starts with, like, my older one was like, what's Brad's book about? And I was like, here's how it starts. The president is like hiding in some car. There's a fake dude in the motorcade and they're going. He doesn't know whether I'm telling like you made up a story,
right,
or if it's real. So he's reading the book.
Of course.
He's like, this is freaking awesome.
Listen, my 21-year-old son is not impressed with anything I do. There's nothing I can do. As my daughter even said recently, why does anyone want you to sign their book? Like, she's just is unimpressed with anything I do. And my son is like, I want this book, The Nazi Conspiracy. And he finished it last night. He does not a big reader. He doesn't, but he was like, this is awesome. He's like, because this is the Nazi thing I want. For me, obviously, I don't care about anything else but getting a compliment from my own child. Like, that's all, if anything else. But I love the fact that we get to show you what's going on then, and also use it to parallel where we are today. That to me is the vital part of it. You can't look, and we didn't plan some of these. Like, when we wrote the book, the Ukraine war hadn't happened yet.
Right.
And there's those scenes in the Ukraine that you see there that are just breathtaking, but they take on a whole new meaning. And that was just the dumb luck of what we were researching, what we were doing. And you get to see, just how brutal the Nazis were in that area, and then watching what is happening there today. And it's obviously the Russians are doing the same thing that the Soviets were fighting to the opposite of back in World War II.
Although you do have to catch yourself while you're reading the book and going like, okay, who's our teammates? Because things have changed, but who's our teammates in this thing?
The thing that that truly was lost on me, and I have to say, is I forgot that the Soviet Union, we're like, oh, the Soviets are on our team, right? They're our teammates here. They started the war on the other side. They were hanging with Hitler, and they're like, the only reason they came to our side is because, guess what? Hitler invaded them and was like, we're taking your stuff too. And then they're like, oh, he just said, get off the bike. And I'm like, okay, we're going to go hang out with America and the UK. Like, and it's an amazing, like, that's the thing when you realize that it's precarious, this alliance that's taking place between Winston Churchill and FDR and Stalin. When you meet Stalin for the first time, FDR walks in, he sees this guy with gray hair, yellow skin. His arm is deformed. He's 5'4", the shortest of them all. It's a supervillain, right? You are just his nickname is the Man of Steel because he's so like just a killer. And you're like, and then we have the guy who they roll in on a wheelchair.
Right.
Again, you can't make this stuff up. And I think the great part of it is we show you the real action scenes of those moments.
Can I ask you this? I don't know if you've memorized what was where. Are you familiar with page 251 in the book?
Oh, very well.
This is a moment where I feel like Brad Meltzer can't help but be Brad Meltzer.
There are moments in there for sure. My wife is like, do you really have to say this? We know. Okay, what's the line?
You were very, very emphatic. So it's at a moment where it's, I think, the third night of the meeting between the big three. And like one night, Stalin hosts, one night, FDR hosts, and it's the third night, or maybe it's the second night, Churchill's going to host.
You're talking about what year he is in his birthday?
It's his birthday.
Yes.
But Brad, you may well have written 4 paragraphs emphatically pointing out it's his 69th birthday.
It was his 69th birthday, man. When he got it, I'm like, what am I going to say? I'm like, by the way, if he was 67, you'd never know his age. No. Like, you would never,
yeah,
ever.
It would have been like, oh, it's his birthday.
But I'm just
it's
like,
his 69th birthday.
All,
there's 69 candles.
But first of all, you're underselling, because this is the moment. The Nazis don't know when to attack, right? So they have to pick, like, when are they going to all be together? They're going to be together for his birthday party, right? Like, that just tells you, like, his 69th birthday party. And Churchill likes to party. You know, the guy's naked in the bathtub. Let's be honest. You know it's going to be a kick-ass party.
Like, you can't help yourself. You stress 69 so much.
It's so good. Winston Churchill's email is WinstonChurchill69. It is 100%.
All right, let me do this. The Nazi Conspiracy is out and available. Brad will be at Barnes & Noble tonight, at Tyson's at 7 o'clock. Quick break, more with Brad Meltzer next. It's Elliot in the Morning. Brad Meltzer is with us. The Nazi Conspiracy, out now. Well, I should give the full name. The Nazi Conspiracy, the secret plot to kill Roosevelt, Stalin, and Churchill. That is out now. Brad Meltzer will be at Barnes & Noble at Tyson's tonight at 7 o'clock. You can go out and meet him. How was last night?
Spectacular.
Was it good?
It was First of all...
Where were you last night? Oh,
Frederick, Maryland. I'm out in Frederick, Maryland, and C-SPAN is there taping. So C-SPAN has, very precise microphones set up on the corners for people to come up. And of course, the moment I'm like, please come up to the thing, people are like, oh, all the way over there? I don't want to go. It's like suddenly everyone lives in Boca. They're like, that's a schlep. I can't go there. And so all these people are just shouting out things, and I'm repeating them for C-SPAN's benefit. And one guy, like 10 minutes into the Q&A, everyone's like, there's a guy there. I'm like, oh, you're the one guy who's following the rules. I got a call on you. You're the guy who walked to the microphone. And all he wants to know is how much I've put you in the Thrillers. And that's all he wants to know. He's just like, what are the ones? I'm like, oh, yeah, he's been a bumper sticker at a strip club. I put Elliot in the Morning in there. And he was one of your guys. So many great listeners from here also came last night.
So the book tour has been good?
Spectacular. I mean, so tonight we're Friday the 13th. It's going to be like Winston Churchill's 69th birthday tonight.
There we go.
If you have nothing to do on Friday night, come to Tyson's Corner. We're going to have fun. I mean, and people that come, what I love the most is so many people come with their kids for the kids' books.
Right.
And I love that people are bringing their kids to hear about the Nazis. Like, that is just a special kind of parent, and they're awesome, and they know that I'm going to talk about the kids' books. I'm going to talk about obviously the Thrillers, and I'm going to talk about the Nazi Conspiracy. And people are just, I think we're tired of being away from each other, and having people come together again is like, you could see that people are just happy to kind of gravitate to each other and celebrate something.
Now, I know that this didn't happen last night, but you did an event for the Nazi Conspiracy in New York.
I did.
The girl who was your first kiss.
Oh, let's talk
ever?
about that. Yes. The Q&As have been spectacular. So maybe the third person who stands up at the very, very back, she's like, Bradley, and if you call me Bradley, I know you know me from when I'm like 8 years old or 10 years old. I know that's what and I look and I'm like, oh, she's here. And I announced to the crowd, I'm like, I can't help myself. I know I'm not supposed to, but I can't help myself. I'm like, everyone, before I hear this question, this is the girl who gave me my first kiss. I said, and...
Did you know she was going to be there?
I did not know she was going to be there. I know her. We're friends for years. I mean, because we went to camp together, and there's a camp group that we all are on a text thread on. But she told me she wasn't coming, so I was like, oh, she's not going to be there. But she should. So there she is.
Bradley.
She's with her. Bradley, exactly. She's from Boca too. And so I say to everyone, I'm like, and my wife would be so mad if I told you this, but it is my first kiss, but my wife's not here, so let's talk about it. And so, and I made that joke years and years ago, like 15 years ago, she had showed up at another signing, and my wife, Corey, was there. And I said to the crowd, I said, here is the woman who gave me my first kiss and the woman who gave me my last. And Corey said to me after the event, never make that joke again. Like, she was just like, never make that joke again. But I love that, like, my first kiss comes to it. And I mean, at every stop, there's been like something there's a kid last night who came in Frederick. His family sent it to me on Christmas. His present was to come to the book signing. And he opened up this thing and they had this picture.
That's his present?
That was his present. He had, and then there was another kid who had a Brad Meltzer birthday party. So, of course, when they told me about this, this was months ago. The poor kid is like, I was like, I feel so bad for him. So I sent him, of course, a video. And so we made a video for the kid. And he came last night, too. And he's sitting in the front row with a Brad doll from our TV show. Oy vey. And I'm literally like, whose catchphrase is Oy vey. Okay? And if I die today, the fact that my catchphrase on a cartoon show is Oy vey, I feel like I've accomplished everything I need to accomplish in life. So the people who have been coming they're fun, they're awesome, and again, it's the 69th birthday today.
Can we go back to your wife for a second? The last video I saw of her, she was being thrown around by a bunch of students at the student section at a Michigan football game.
Yeah, this is maybe the only compliment my son has given us beside liking the Nazi conspiracy. So we go to the Michigan football game. When they score a touchdown, you know, the tradition is you grab someone and you kind of throw them in the air for how many points you score. And my wife and I are like, I don't want to sit with the old people. I want to sit in the student section. It's way more fun. So my son, when you go to the Michigan game, there's 110,000 people. Your phones don't work, of course. And I can't find him. So we don't know where he is because, you know, you don't sit in your seats. You just kind of like flood the section. So I'm like, I got to find my kid. So I take my hat off and I just walk. I'm like, I'm going to be the only bald guy there that's middle-aged. And I'm just going to walk the student section in 110,000 people. And Corey's like, what are you doing? I'm like, it's going to work. Watch. This is the old way. And I walk down. It's 100 rows. You come in at row 75 and I'm walking down 10 rows, nothing. Another 10, another 10. I'm now close to the field and all of a sudden I hear, Dad. And I turn around and there's my kid. So we sit with my kid and she's like, I can't believe that worked. I'm like, are you kidding me? So my son, this is the compliment he gives me. He's like, you're the only parents that can hang. And I'm like, oh, that's the greatest. I don't even care if you don't like, you know, the books I write. That is worth it. And so they picked my wife up and they threw her in the air. We had so much fun at the game. It was great.
There's a not to be a downer now, but the book is dedicated to a professor of yours at Michigan by the name of Tom Collier.
Tom Collier, yeah.
Right. And I guess he was he was a professor, but you sent your kid to try to track him down.
Yeah, so when I was doing the dedication, Tom Collier was the guy who taught me my love of World War II. I tried to write a paper in college. Again, my nerdiness is going to reveal itself here if it hasn't so far. My paper was called Comic Books as Propaganda in World War II. And they said to me, that's the stupidest topic ever. You got to find someone who will literally be your mentor in this and be your advisor. And I went to Tom Collier because I knew he was a veteran, and he's like, you got to do this story. And so when I was dedicating the book, I'm like, I got to dedicate it to this professor. I can't find him. Internet's nothing. The name Tom Collier is too common. I don't know where he is, and the school doesn't know where he is. So my son, I can find an address because I'm, using my little detective skills, and I say I got his last known address, and there's no phone. I said, can you go there? I sent my son to his house in Ann Arbor. So I'm like, listen, just go. My son's like, I'm not going to knock on an old guy's door. I'm like, yes, you are. Like, I'm paying the tuition. Go knock on his door. And to his credit, he does. No one's there. He doesn't even knock on the door. He gets to the door, and he can see the Amazon packages are for someone else. He's like, Dad, he's not here. So I finally keep working. Someone in the history department gives me his son, and his son tells me that he's basically got he's really sick. He's not with it anymore. And but I got to tell his son, listen, your dad was so amazing to me, and this book is dedicated to him. And what's so interesting is he just a few weeks ago passed away.
Oh no!
And I love the fact that his son got to hear that before it happened, and his family gets to take the Nazi conspiracy and know this one is actually for him.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Like that part's great. Like,
no,
that
man,
part
you got
is
to honor your
fantastic.
teachers, man. I mean, and that's the thing is his son, and the guy was like, this decorated veteran who's a killer. He was in Vietnam fighting and like enlisted for multiple tours. And his son was like, just to be able to tell his son like what a softy he was, you know, and you could see this whole other side of, you know, his parenting. It was pretty amazing.
And to Brad's defense, if comic books and propaganda in World War II was what your college paper was, you did manage to work it into the Nazi conspiracy.
First of all, not once but twice. Okay, so you know, Josh and I are doing the research, and he points out that, you know, Captain America, of course, is born in World War II. It's by these two Jewish, you know, creators. And I'm like, you know, Josh,
here we
know
go.
what else the other Jews gave? Have you ever heard of Superman? And so then I'm like, I go to the editor and I'm like, I think we need to buy the cover to Captain America #1 because I think that needs to go in the book. And they're like, what are you talking? I'm like, yeah, we need all the Nazis and then we need this comic book cover. But the truth is, it's important. You know, the reason Superman gets created is two 17-year-old kids create Superman.
Right.
They're nerdy kids. They're not popular. They're not good looking, but they give the world something to believe in. And at that moment, America's scared, and we're worried about World War II encroaching on our shores. And here comes Superman, bathed basically in an American flag, and sells 1 million copies. And everyone's like, why? And why? Because we want someone to come save us. And that's why we get Captain America, right? The first issue of Captain America, he's literally physically punching Hitler in the jaw.
Right.
Before we're really committed to the war. It's these two kids, these two Jews who are like, you know what? We got to take a stand. We got to act. And you know, everyone wasn't as brave back then, but it's these teenagers and these young kids in their 20s who are like, screw this. Hitler's doing the wrong thing. And that's who speaks up first. And you know my love of superheroes, but man, that's what a hero looks like, is using your voice and saying no.
Right. By the way, nice transition, if you will. There's a kid's book, is it Tuesday that John Lewis comes out?
Yeah. So we're doing I Am John Lewis is the newest book, comes out in a couple days. And you know, this shows you kind of, I don't ever realize where I am emotionally, but these two books, The Nazi Conspiracy and I Am John Lewis, are the same exact theme. The book is about getting in good trouble, teaching your kids how to get in good trouble, what John Lewis called necessary trouble. And John Lewis was a huge supporter of the I Am books.
Right.
He said to me how much he loved the Rosa Parks book. When we did I Am Martin Luther King Jr., I actually was like, well, you march with him. I'm like, would you be our advisor for the book? And he was actually the advisor on that book.
How do you keep that quiet?
Because I don't want to say that. I don't want to be like selling books on his, you know, I don't want to be like, hey, look at our book. And so I know it's been like 5 years and this is the first time I'm really talking about it, but you know, the only regret I have is I never got to tell him we were doing the book on him. He died, of course.
Right, sure.
And so,
did you stay like text buddies with him after that?
No, I mean, I basically, I would see him. He came to Miami Book Fair. I got to see him there, and his staff is so nice. Andrew, this guy who he wrote March with, is his famous autobiography, became our advisor for I Am John Lewis. And the book, what I love is, you know, John Lewis was always told, don't make any trouble. Like, just don't get in trouble by his parents. And his grandmother was like, this woman who, if you were black back then and a white person came walking down the street, you were expected as a black person to cross the street and get out of the way. And his grandmother was like, I'm not doing that. And she respectfully would be like, you know, nice to meet you, but I'm just going to walk my way right here. And John Lewis saw that. And he saw the lessons of Rosa Parks. He grew up and saw the lessons of Dr. King. And he thought that, you know, you got to get in good trouble. When you see something that's unfair, you got to speak up. And what I love is they asked him, the number one thing he said that they asked him, you know, people would spit at him and curse at him and hit him, and he'd never lose his temper. And when you think of how we talk to each other today, just think about that a moment. And they always ask him, how do you do that? And he said that the way he does it is he has his faith. And his faith, though, is believing in something so much that you can make a way out of no way. And I love that, right? Making a way out of no way.
So not faith like religious faith.
No, like just a faith and the strong belief that you can do this impossible thing and it's worth doing. And to me, I feel like I want my kids to learn that lesson. And it wasn't until I started the book tour and I was at the first event talking about it, I was like, oh, these two books are literally about me watching our culture and our country sometimes making these horrible choices and then stepping outside and saying, no, you can't do things like that. You can't target small communities because you don't like the color of their skin. You can't target people that you don't like because of where they're from.
Right.
Like, that's not the way we should be. And so the Nazi Conspiracy is the adult version of it, and I Am John Lewis is the kids version of it. And again, I didn't plan it. I'm not smart enough to plan it. It's just where I am emotionally right now in the country.
Right. So that comes out on
Tuesday.
On Tuesday,
yeah.
That'll be out. The Nazi Conspiracy is out now. The are you going to do? So where are we in the rest of the book writing world?
So the next book that comes out in the I Am series is we're doing our first autistic hero. We had so many families asking for that. We're doing I Am Temple Grandin.
Right.
And Temple Grandin helped us with the book. And I got on the phone with Temple Grandin, and it was so fantastic to have her like tell me so potently what is completely wrong in what scene is. She's like, that's wrong. I'm like, okay, thank you very much. It's so spectacular. I love her. So I Am Temple Grandin comes out in March. We do I Am Wonder Woman to go along with I Am Superman and I Am Batman comes out in October. And if you come to the book signing tonight, I'll tell you guys after, but if you come to the book signing tonight, I will tell you who comes after that. They're spectacular. And we are doing that. And then I'm working on the next Zig and Nola book, the follow-up to the Lightning Rod.
How far along are you?
Not as far along as I've told the editor. I mean, the editor's like, how far are you? I'm like, super far. I'm not on tour for the Nazi conspiracy at all. I'm not gone for 2 weeks traveling the country. I'm super writing right now. Like, I can't believe what's happening.
Will there be another, I don't know if it'll follow in the conspiracy, but are you going to do another,
Josh and I know what we're doing. Yeah, we're doing another one right now. I'll tell you after. It's a good one.
Do I want to know?
You maybe don't. Maybe you do. I don't know. No. I'll save this one. I'll tell you the other one.
Don't do that because then I don't feel like I know a secret. But then I worry about keeping it.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know. We don't know what we're doing.
No, but you know what? The truth is, in the conspiracy books, if you would have said, like, you're obviously a big history nerd, but if you would have said, Elliot, I am doing a book. It's all about the conspiracy to kill Abraham Lincoln, I'd have been like, oh, okay, well, that should be exciting.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll be a great read.
I got to rock.
But then you sit down and you read it and you're like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. The same thing with Washington. And if you would have said, now, I had the benefit of having read the previous two, so I kind of know what I'm going to, it's not just going to be some rando story, it's going to read well. But even if you would have said with no context, I'm going to do this story about this conspiracy to kill FDR or Churchill or Stalin, I'd have been like, sweet, when's Zig and Nola coming along? Because I know the thriller part of it. But I got to be honest, reading this thing, it is like reading a thriller.
No, and listen, that's the goal. I mean, and you know, the other thing is it's the subject matter, right? The Nazis and World War II is really the only time in maybe I could say all American history, but maybe, you know, modern history where America comes in, does the right thing, saves the day. Everyone agrees we do. You know, when was the last time that happened?
Right.
Where we all said, you know what, the government did the right thing and saved the day. Like, that sounds like our news headlines today, you know, like, and it's the one thing we can agree on. You know, World War II isn't just a thing that happened. It's an ideal for us as Americans. It's how to be a good person and stand up for those who need help and stand up against evil. That we're truly fighting evil in World War II. But as you said, it's just one of the most amazing stories. And it's a thriller. It's a built-in thriller because they're trying to murder Churchill and Stalin and Roosevelt. And I was like, this is how to, and again, the moment I saw it, like when we did the Lincoln one, we had like 3 or 4 different Lincoln stories and we're like, which one's the best one? When we found this, I was like, there's no question. This is the single best World War II story. Like, if you know someone who loves history, I know this is the one. And even if you don't, this is a thriller. Go for it.
Do you play the mental game in your head of, would you have been, I think Holmes is his name, the Secret Service guy?
Oh, no,
who was in the car?
Mike Riley?
No, Riley was FDR's guy, but the guy who was the fake president in the motorcade.
Yeah.
Would you have taken that gig? I mean, it's not like you said yes or no.
I know he didn't get shot, so, but yeah, I mean, you know.
No, but you don't know that ahead of time.
I mean, that's the thing.
Would you have taken that gig?
Me? Do you see how I'm built? Do I look like a Secret Service? Let me tell you my favorite. So I'm going to tell you the story. So I'm sitting with. I'm at a literacy event. The President George H.W. Bush and Barbara Bush have this literacy event in Texas where they bring in Democrats, Republicans, raise money for literacy, and they bring us in. I'm sitting next to the First Lady. I'm sitting next to Barbara Bush. And one of the authors, 1,000 people in this huge, massive room, and one of the authors who's speaking in front of everybody, he faints in the middle of his talk. And the other guy on the opposite side of Barbara Bush is my friend James Bradley, who wrote Flyboys. You know, his dad raised the flag at Iwo Jima.
Right.
And he's like, he's a macho, strong guy. His reaction in that moment, he physically leaps up onto the stage. We're in the front row. He leaps up onto the stage and he catches this author before he hits the ground.
Oh my God.
My reaction.
Here we go. This is going to be good. This is going to be good.
Is my mouth is gaping open and Barbara Bush turns to me and looks at me and says, "Why don't you get the Secret Service?" So that means Barbara Bush reacted faster than I did. She was like 87 years old at the time. And I looked at her and I said, I'm going to go get the Secret Service. Like, she didn't even say help him because she knew you're incapable of helping him. You are only capable of going and telling someone else to help him. That is what...
If someone tells you
to tell him. And I realized in that moment, like in the moment of fight or flight, I know where I am in that moment. Like, it has been revealed.
All right. The Nazi conspiracy, the secret plot to kill Roosevelt, Stalin, and Churchill is out now. Did you plan it to go up against Spare?
Oh, that was a thrill for us. I mean, so we picked the spot where like, oh, there's no other book out. We're going to be the history book. We're going to be the thing that everyone buys. And by the way, when you put out the lightning rod, there's what they call crash books, which are books that you put out last minute with no announcement. And because if you know in advance, you stay away from the big books. You don't want to go up against John Grisham. Last book we do, 6 weeks before it comes out, James Patterson announces his new book with Dolly Parton comes out against us. So I'm fighting Patterson and Dolly Parton. This time they're like, oh, there's a crash book coming out. The only other time in the entire year, and it's friggin' Prince Harry. So I'm like, but I felt like for 25 years we've never had the competition. So these books don't sell themselves, but taking on Prince Harry is not. My wife is like, you're going to get slaughtered. I'm like, thank you, honey. I really appreciate that show of support.
Well, he's setting records.
Oh, yeah.
Like, this is great.
I mean,
he was like, who are we up against? Meltzer. Okay.
Okay. Oh, yeah. He's
Hey, you
the
mean
one
that pussy from the illiteracy
the
event?
guy who fainted at the literacy event? Yeah, that was him.
All right, the Nazi conspiracy, the secret plot to kill Roosevelt, Stalin, and Churchill, that is out now. Brad will be at Barnes & Noble tonight at Tyson's at 7 o'clock. Tuesday of next week, I Am John Lewis, Ordinary People Change the World. That will come out. Dude, so good to see you. The book is great. The book is fantastic.